afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. Today's topic are anti-tank guns, too effective versus heavy armor. That's at least sort of the question I'm posing. And personally, I'd say, well, yeah, actually, I think for the sort of cost level and sort of tier leveling, I think anti-tanks in many cases I think are too efficient against heavy armor. You might ask, well, another question is, how many times do you now actually see heavy armor being utilized, except maybe the occasional Pershing? I mean, do you see Tiger tanks a lot? Do you see King Tigers a lot? Do you see IS-2s a lot? No, not really. And obviously you might argue that's just because they kept them there for them, but at the same time, I mean, these units are still pretty strong on their own. It's just, I mean, in terms of stuff that can easily counter them, there's a large variety of units that can do it, and obviously some of them are supposed to like tank destroyers, but the question of course here is then, should a tier 2 manpower only unit, in some cases tier 1, be able to easily just, put a stop to any armor? And again, I posit no. I mean, compared with the King Tiger, which actually requires tech, all your structures, many resources, get a pair of field guns out, or 6-pounder guns, or whatever, and they can actually, put a stop to it reasonably well. I mean, at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of sort of the opportunity cost as well, because with the King Tiger, most of the armor, you have to save a lot of resources, manpower, fuel, which actually, puts a dent into your own economy, and means you can't push as much as you want to as you save up for it. Going for 2 field guns, that's 320 manpower here, 320 manpower there. Not exactly a massive sort of, again, opportunity cost either. It's not, exactly something that's holding down your economy comparatively, yet these 2 field guns could, theoretically, you should just ensure King Tiger doesn't get too far. A Tiger tank or whatever, something it's like, a pair of Pack 40s can pretty much, stop an IS-2, or even a Pershing from going too far. I mean, even Comets and Panthers, suffers a lot from this. I mean, again, a pair of just low, tech units can very quickly just ensure that your big investment doesn't actually get too far. And I think in part that's actually what sort of ensures you just don't see a lot of these units, because comparatively to how much you have to invest into them, resource, effort-wise and time-wise, the counter in this case in terms of the anti-tank guns, I think is just a bit too easy to pull off. Like, it's just too efficient in this case, I'd say. I'm not saying they shouldn't be useful at all versus heavy tanks, but right now I think field guns, Pack 40s, the cannon efforts, 6-pounder guns are all just a tad too efficient when it comes to just dealing with the heavy armor, undermining, the worth of the heavy armor, when again your opponent technically doesn't even need to go for like tank destroyers to stop them, which in that sense, a much more bigger investment. Even say a pair of Stooks actually requires a lot of fuel, another tier. I mean, compared to getting a pair of Stooks to stop an IS-2, for example, is a much bigger resource investment than say getting a pair of Pack 40s to stop an IS-2. And I think that in part plays a bit of a role in us in ensuring the IS-2 doesn't see a lot of usage. Or again, a pair of SIS-3s, a lot cheaper, say a pair of SUD-5s, and again just ensures well, why should you even consider in most cases a Panther? I mean, I think that's also in part what ensures just people go for a lot of medium tanks, because if your tank is going to in most cases be penetrated no matter what, you might as well just aim for quantity rather than quality. And again, I think part of the issue there that's causing this is simply the fact that anti-tank guns are just too cost efficient versus heavy armor. I mean, again, if quality stops meaning anything, you might as well go for quantity, and thusly we're seeing tons of Panther 4s, T-34s, Shermans, whatever, tank destroyers in some cases, because they got really good info to back it up with. But very importantly, we're not seeing a lot of heavy armor in general. And I mean, you could theoretically buff the heavy tank, but at that point you're just going to risk you going back to Fury Syndrome days, where again people just ignore all of the tech to push it, because all of a sudden the heavy tank is just super efficient. And I'd rather not go there either. I mean, I kind of want to make tech viable as well. So again, I'm rather just looking to, well, what else could we do to make the heavy tanks more viable? And I think in that regard, increasing the cost barrier, whatever, just to actually stopping them efficiently should, I think, be increased. And that again means nerfing anti-tank guns versus heavy tanks somehow. I mean, my personal suggestion, well, one of them would be to just basically decrease the long range penetration, so overall more shots bounce off it. You could compensate by actually giving them deflection, which I think the overall most things should have beforehand, maybe 20 damage. That way, it doesn't feel all bad when the shots bounce, but still, I mean, 20 damage versus 160 damage in most cases, there's a massive difference. You're going to have to hit 8 times to get through, so to get the same effort. But again, it's going to make the King Tiger, IS-2, Panther, Comet, whatever, the armor's going to feel more worth it. The overall going to feel like better investments than they currently are now, where again, you just get 200 tank guns, and yeah, you're not going to get any further. So by doing that, we might, of course, actually increase the value of tech overall, because all of a sudden you are more needing to consider tank destroyers to actually stop, saying a heavy armor push from your opponent. I mean, in that regard, suddenly things become a little, I think, less linear as well. More options have to be considered. It might also make all of those nerfs to rearmor more worthwhile, because again, you might also have to consider flanking more of the heavy tanks. Again, that way, heavy frontal armor for the heavy tanks becomes a lot more valued. Another option would be to somehow apply some sort of damage penalties, like they only actually do half damage or 3/4 damage to the heavy tank when they penetrate. That could be an option. Again, at this point, again, we're sort of being back, well, why do we have armor in the first place then? So I mean, I kind of like the other solution, but you could do that, or you just apply some kind of damage modifier like to the KV1, which is all damage is lowered to the heavy tanks. Though, of course, again, that means they just become super good versus everything, and then we're sort of back to just Fuhrer Syndrome days. So again, I feel like the solution is somehow to look at the anti-tank guns and, lower their overall efficiency versus heavy armor. In this regard, I just feel like lowering the penetration on the sort of long range. I mean, keep them sort of reasonable well up close, but at longer ranges, I do feel like anti-tank guns should probably be less stellar versus heavy armor. Again, that way, making tank destroyers and such more necessary to try and stop them, and increasing, the utility and usefulness and just overall value of heavy armor, from Panthers and Comets to, IS-2s and King Tigers, with everything in between, which again, you get a pair of anti-tank guns out, and they're not going to feel that impressive, to use. So that's, sort of my idea there. Overall, I mean, again, there are other solutions maybe, but I feel like this one just sort of minimized the potential impact of just people, rushing straight for heavy armor. Again, ignoring all tech, because, right, I mean, again, they just make the heavy tank somehow super awesome. Again, whereas this, I mean, anti-tank can still be used, but they're not going to be super efficient, and tech is still going to be, the necessary thing to stop it. At the same time, you can't just then super rely on your own anti-tank guns in case you rush for it, in which case you'd usually get to anti-tanks, well, just that way, turn the fight around. So you might actually have to also consider taking up to have a better chance versus any other heavy armor imposed in case your opponent gets it, by successfully stalling using tank destroyers instead. So I think by doing this, we could sort of, get a slightly more interesting meta, at least when it comes to heavy armor, not making it too good, but at least making it feel more valuable, useful, and of course also think, slightly, decreasing people's sort of proclivity to just go for anti-tank gun spam, which you do see occasionally, because again, you can't really get punished in terms of armor for it. I mean, again, they can efficiently deal with any tank, which actually seems kind of crazy again when they're just, basically a tier 1, tier 2 unit, depending on the faction. I mean, that's, again, I feel too efficient, and that's really the problem I feel with anti-tank guns. They are too efficient in choice. They can stop too many things too easily, again, in terms of armor, and I think that kind of makes them too good, personally. I mean, feel free to disagree with that, of course. Do be respectful and civil about it. I mean, let's try and have a constructive discussion about this rather than a shouting contest, which I don't think is going to lead us to anywhere. But what do you think? Do you feel like anti-tanks are too effective versus heavy armor, or do you feel like there's something else that makes heavy armor, say, shall we say, less useful on the battlefield? But again, personally, I posit the theory that it's because, in part, anti-tank guns just counter heavy tanks so easily that it is in fact decreasing the value of stuff like IS-2s, King Tigers, Panthers and Comets, because, I mean, if your large investment there, which again takes time and effort and all that, is easily stopped by something that doesn't take nearly as much time and effort or resources, I mean, you're just going to, focus on something that themselves requires less resources to deal with it. So, sign off in the comments. This is Imperial Lane signing off for now. Thank you all for joining in. And of course, you like it, subscribe, comment, like, share, and all that. And apparently, also remember to press the little bell next to the subscribe comment, because YouTube, as always, are a bunch of clowns. And of course, if you like to do, you can also consider supporting via Patreon or PayPal. Links in the description. This is Imperial Lane signing off, and see you all another time for another video. Cheers.